Long before the first word was written, our ancestors built a library out of stone. They spoke a silent language, embedding entire worldviews into monuments that have outlasted every empire. This video will teach you how to read the hidden messages in ancient sites, from the towering pillars of Göbekli Tepe to the perfect circles of Stonehenge. You will discover a sophisticated global code that conveyed advanced astronomy, complex mathematics, and sacred beliefs. What cosmic secrets are locked within the alignment of a single standing stone, and why did cultures across the world use the same architectural grammar? What does it mean to hear the whispers of the first builders after 12,000 years of silence? That first spark of symbolic thought was a quiet revolution inside the human mind. It was the moment a person could look at a carved line and see not just a groove in rock, but the flow of a river, or trace a circle and understand the endless cycle of the seasons. This new ability to think in symbols gave people a shared vocabulary of shapes long before a single word was ever written down. Cognitive archaeologists like Stephen Mithen proposed this was the essential foundation for everything that followed. It allowed a group to share a complex idea, to plan together, and to build with a common purpose that extended far beyond mere survival. We can see this early language etched into stone across the globe. Take the cup and ring marks found from Scotland to the Iberian Peninsula. To our modern eyes, they might look like simple circular grooves, perhaps even ancient graffiti. But their persistence and widespread use tell a different story. They appear consistently, a pattern repeated across vast distances and centuries. This was not random scratching. It was a deliberate, sophisticated code. We may not yet have the key to translate its specific message, but we can understand its function. It was a way to bind a community together with shared beliefs, to mark a sacred place, or to record an observation of the world. This was how knowledge first began to travel through time, passed from one generation to the next without a single written character. It was this very cognitive revolution that set the stage for humanity's first great architectural experiments, transforming simple symbols into structures that touch the sky. The perfect circle is a shape that echoes across the world. From the windswept plains of Britain to the ancient highlands of Turkey, our ancestors raised rings of stone that share a common, flawless form. This was no accident of isolated cultures. It was the first principle of a universal language, a shared grammar written in geometry. These builders understood the fundamental properties of shapes, and they used this knowledge to construct a reality that connected the earth to the cosmos. The archaeologist Alexander Thom spent decades surveying hundreds of these sites. He proposed that Neolithic engineers were using a standardized unit of measurement, a megalithic yard, that appears again and again in monuments separated by vast distances. This was not crude construction with random stones. It was precision engineering on a grand scale. They employed Pythagorean triangles, perfect circles, and complex ellipses long before the terms for these shapes even existed. The geometry itself was the message. It encoded sacred ratios found in nature, from the spirals of shells to the orbits of celestial bodies. Look at the great tomb of Newgrange in Ireland. Its internal chamber and outer structure are built with proportions that mirror the cycles of the solar year. The very stones are arranged to capture the winter solstice sunrise, a fleeting beam of light that illuminates a chamber untouched by the sun for the rest of the year. This was high mathematics woven into ritual. It was a way to unify scattered communities under a single, magnificent cosmological vision. proving that the principles we credit to Greeks like Pythagoras were being practiced with masterful skill thousands of years earlier. This profound mastery of form and space, however, was only the beginning. The true purpose of this stone grammar was to achieve something even more ambitious, a mastery over time itself. This dialogue with the stars was matched by a profound connection to the earth itself. The builders did not simply place their monuments on the land, they wove them into its very fabric. They listened to the whispers of the earth, sensing its hidden energies and choosing locations with a purpose that went far beyond finding flat ground. These sites were often selected for their unique geological features, magnetic anomalies, or acoustic properties. A hill might be chosen not just for its height, but for the specific way sound echoes across its summit. A particular rock outcrop could be used because it resonated with a deep, humming frequency when struck. This was geomancy, the art of aligning human structures with the perceived spiritual and energetic currents of the natural world. The Great Pyramids of Giza, for instance, are not only astronomically aligned but are also situated atop a massive limestone plateau that seems to amplify their grandeur and stability. In Britain, many stone circles are built along powerful ley lines, hypothetical alignments between ancient sites that some believe channel terrestrial energy. Whether we interpret this energy in spiritual or purely geological terms, the intention is clear. The builders were seeking a sacred union, a marriage between their celestial calendar and the living body of the earth, creating a complete cosmic language spoken through placement and stone. A powerful presence still lingers at places like the Hill of Tara in Ireland. You do not choose such a place for convenience, you are called to it by something far deeper. This is the third principle, the language of the land itself, an ancient practice known as geomancy. It is the art of placing structures in perfect harmony with the earth's subtle energies and its spiritual geography. Anthropologists observe that these sacred sites were rarely random. They were often positioned at the intersections of hypothetical ley lines or built directly atop powerful geological features like magnetic anomalies, underground water streams, or unique mineral deposits. The location was never just a backdrop, it was an active part of the message. A river was not an obstacle to cross, but a serpentine spirit to be honored. A mountain was not a barrier, but a sacred ancestor whose silhouette was woven into the alignment of the stones. This profound integration is masterfully displayed at the Great Serpent Mound in Ohio. This massive earthwork does not simply sit on the land, it becomes the land. Its serpentine body coils and curves, mirroring the very contours of the hills it rests upon, while its alignment also speaks to celestial events like the summer solstice sunset. It is a creation myth written not on a page but across an entire landscape. By listening so intently to the language of the earth, these builders created places of amplified power and significance, where the human-made and the natural world held a perfect, sacred conversation. And this profound dialogue was often encoded in the very materials they chose to use. The immense journey of Stonehenge's bluestones began over 150 miles away in the Preseli Hills of Wales. Why would a civilization without wheels or draft animals move 80 massive stones across such a brutal distance? The answer is that the stone itself was speaking. The type of rock was not a matter of convenience, it was a core part of the message. Different stones carried profound symbolic meanings tied to their origin, their color, and their perceived spiritual power. Geologists working alongside archaeologists have become detectives tracing these materials back to their source quarries, and in doing so, they have uncovered vast, sophisticated networks of trade and pilgrimage. At Stonehenge, the choice of materials reveals a complex material code. the giant sarsen stones, forming the iconic outer circle and trilithons, were sourced from closer locations. Their immense size and durability spoke of permanence, stability, and a connection to the solar cycle. In stark contrast, the smaller blue stones hauled from that distant Welsh landscape were believed to possess potent healing properties. Their very presence transformed the monument into a sacred hospital, a place of both astronomical observation and physical restoration. This symbolic use of material extended far beyond Salisbury Plain. In other cultures, polished greenstone axes were treasured items that represented status and power, circulating across Europe. In Scotland, the Callanish stones were erected from local Lewisian gneiss. This particular rock has a crystalline structure that catches the low northern sun, making the entire circle sparkle and shimmer with an otherworldly light. The builders did not just see a rock, they saw a story. The material told a tale of a long and arduous journey, of deep ancestral connections to a specific homeland, and of the spiritual qualities they attributed to the very bones of the earth. But this language of material was only the canvas. Upon it, the builders etched a second, more intricate layer of meaning. Etched into the stone walls of the Lascaux caves, a herd of ancient bison seems to move in the flickering torchlight. These are not simple pictures, they are humanity's first hard drives, a sophisticated system of data storage carved and painted onto the very landscape. This is the fourth principle, the language of petroglyphs and pictograms, a two-dimensional lexicon of pre-literate life. Researchers like David Lewis Williams interpret these powerful images as more than just hunting records. They are maps of the spirit world, visions from shamanic journeys that connected the community to the realms of the ancestors and the gods. Each symbol was a word in this visual vocabulary. A spiral might represent a spiritual journey or the cycle of life and death. Concentric circles often marked a sacred site or a portal to another world. A handprint stenciled in red ochre was a personal signature, a declaration of identity and presence that shouted, "I was here," across thousands of years. At the Petroglyph National Monument in New Mexico, the scale of this data storage becomes breathtakingly clear. Thousands of images cover the volcanic rock, recording centuries of cultural knowledge. A single panel might show a hunting strategy, depicting the migration patterns of game and the techniques used to pursue them. Another might tell the history of a clan, its triumphs and its losses, all narrated through the silent language of symbol and form. These walls were not passive decorations, they were interactive libraries and teaching tools. An elder would point to a specific glyph, using it to illustrate a story about the stars or to explain a critical survival skill to the next generation. They were also living ritual objects, their power activated by touch, by ceremony, and by the stories breathed into them. This two-dimensional language, so rich and complex, was the direct precursor to an even more profound development, one that would lift this symbolic code from the flat surface of the rock and build it into the world around us. The silent language of symbols was not meant only for spiritual contemplation. It was soon co-opted to build the very foundations of power. Visualize the sheer scale of the Great Pyramid of Giza, a project that required the coordination of thousands of workers for decades. This was not merely a tomb, it was a loud and clear message of a ruler's divine authority and the state's immense organizational power. Egyptologist Mark Lehner's work at Giza reveals how these constructions were as much about social control as they were about religion. This architectural language used overwhelming scale, staggering labor investment, and deliberate inaccessibility to communicate a rigid social hierarchy and centralize authority. The pyramid's perfect, smooth sides, reaching for the sun god Ra, were a permanent, undeniable assertion of the pharaoh's absolute power, designed to impress, intimidate, and legitimize his dynasty for generations to come. This pattern repeats across the ancient world. The great ziggurats of Mesopotamia physically lifted the priesthood closer to the gods, creating a steep, monumental staircase that only the elite could ascend, separating the rulers from the ruled in both a physical and a spiritual sense. On the remote island of Rapa Nui, the massive moai statues were far more than portraits. They represented the power, resources, and lineage of competing clans. Erecting a larger, more imposing statue was a direct challenge, a statement of superiority carved in volcanic rock. The message of power was always intertwined with a message of deep spiritual belief, creating an inseparable bond between divine right and earthly command that was literally set in stone. Deep beneath the island of Malta lies a sanctuary that feels less like a building and more like a living body. The hypogeum of Hal Saflieni is a labyrinthine complex carved entirely underground, its chambers and passages deliberately shaped to mimic the curves and contours of a womb. This was not a random design, it was a direct physical expression of a creation myth, a place where the architecture itself embodied the goddess central to their beliefs. To enter this space was to return symbolically to the source of all life, to physically experience a core tenet of their cosmology. This is the fifth principle, the encoding of mythology and cosmology into stone. Builders were not just constructing shelters, they were building models of the universe as they understood it. Comparative mythologists like Joseph Campbell identified recurring archetypes across cultures, and we see these same patterns etched into ancient sites worldwide. A common architectural template divided the world into three tiers, with structures representing the underworld, the earth we walk upon, and the celestial heavens above. The very act of moving through such a building was a spiritual journey, a pilgrimage through the cosmos. Nowhere is this more vividly illustrated than at the Borobudur Temple in Indonesia. This staggering monument is a massive, three-dimensional mandala. Pilgrims do not simply walk into a temple, they embark on a prescribed path, ascending through multiple terraces that correspond to successive levels of Buddhist cosmology. The journey begins in the world of desire, moves through the world of form, and ultimately ascends to the formless world of enlightenment at the very top. The architecture is the script, and the pilgrim is the actor, performing a sacred story with every step. This profound integration of myth and structure was often anchored to the real sky above, with alignments designed to capture the sun on a solstice or the moon at its most extreme standstill, fusing the celestial map with the earthly one in a single, silent, and spectacular narrative. The skeletal remains found in the worker cemeteries at Giza tell a surprising story. These were not slaves, but well-fed, highly respected artisans. They formed a class of master masons, anonymous geniuses whose names are lost to time, but whose legacy is etched into the very stone they shaped. These builders were the elite engineers of their age, possessing a vast, orally transmitted library of knowledge that spanned mathematics, astronomy, geology, and complex logistics. They understood the precise angle needed to lift a multi-ton block, the geological properties that made one quarry superior to another, and the celestial alignments that gave their structures eternal meaning. This was not the work of primitive cavemen, but of a sophisticated, specialized profession. To protect their invaluable techniques, these masons likely formed close-knit guilds or secret societies. Their trade secrets were passed down not in books, but through rigorous apprenticeships and initiation rites, creating an unbroken chain of knowledge from one generation to the next. This explains the stunning uniformity of advanced techniques we find in completely separate parts of the world. Look at the polygonal masonry in Peru, where stones at sites like Sacsayhuaman fit together so perfectly that not even a razor blade can slide between them. Then look across the ocean to the similarly perfect interlocking walls in Japan. This is not a coincidence. It is evidence of a shared, global tradition of high-level stoneworking, a universal grammar of construction that emerged independently, challenging our linear view of technological progress. These master masons discovered the same fundamental principles of physics and geometry, developing near-identical solutions to the same monumental problems. Their legacy forces us to ask a deeper question, one that looks past the grand monuments to the simple yet brilliant tools in their hands. The stones of Sacsayhuaman fit together with a silence more profound than any explanation. A blade of steel finds no purchase between them, a seamless puzzle of interlocking angles that has weathered centuries of earthquakes. How did a culture without iron tools or the wheel achieve a precision that our own technology struggles to explain? This is the sixth principle, the enduring mystery of their advanced tooling and engineering. The conventional story of stone hammers and copper chisels feels inadequate when faced with such perfection. It forces us to consider possibilities that sound like science fiction. Were the builders using forgotten techniques, perhaps even harnessing sound waves to soften stone or levitate massive blocks? While theories of sonic levitation or anti-gravity remain in the realm of speculation, they highlight a fundamental truth. We are likely underestimating the power of a refined, patient application of simple tools. The real technology may not have been in the tool itself, but in the generations of accumulated knowledge about the stone's behavior. It was a language of applied force and geometry, spoken by masters who understood rock as a living material. This mastery is not isolated to Peru. In the jungles of Costa Rica, massive stone spheres were carved with near-perfect sphericality, their purpose unknown but their geometry flawless. In ancient Egypt, core drills bored into granite with a precision and speed that still puzzles modern engineers. These were not brute force operations. They were demonstrations of a profound, almost intimate, understanding of material science. The quarrying, the shaping, the transporting, and the final placement of these megaliths were all parts of a single, sophisticated process. It was a technological language, one that allowed them to converse with the very fabric of the earth, shaping it to a will that was guided by a purpose far greater than simple shelter or even grand monuments. The stones themselves were designed to sing. Deep within Malta's hypogeum, a single spoken word in the so-called oracle chamber does not simply echo, it transforms. A deep voice resonates through the carved limestone, the sound waves bending and amplifying until the source becomes impossible to locate, creating an eerie presence that seems to emanate from the very rock. This was not an architectural accident. It was the seventh principle, a deliberate use of acoustic properties and sonic symbolism to craft an experience that could alter human consciousness. Researchers in the field of archaeoacoustics like Stephen J. Waller map the sonic landscapes of these ancient sites, revealing how chambers and passages were engineered to manipulate sound with stunning intention. They were creating resonant frequencies, precise echoes, and standing waves that physically vibrated through a person's body. This was not merely for dramatic effect, it was a technology of the spirit. At Ireland's Newgrange, the interior corbelled roof and chamber shape can amplify a specific chant or rhythm, turning a human voice into a pervasive, otherworldly force. In the labyrinthine tunnels of Chavín de Huanta in Peru, the effect is even more direct. Priests would blow conch shell trumpets called pututus from hidden galleries. The sound would travel through the stone corridors, merging into a disorienting, low-frequency roar that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. For a pilgrim, this experience would be overwhelming, a convincing simulation of a deity's powerful voice speaking directly from the earth. In these spaces, sound was a sacred tool, and the architecture was a finely tuned instrument. The stones did not just convey a visual message, they carried a vibrational one, a frequency meant to be felt in the bones and the soul, marking these chambers as truly set apart from the ordinary world. This profound sonic layer reveals that the builder's language was not silent at all, but a complex symphony of form, alignment, and vibration, all working in concert to create a complete sensory and spiritual reality. The sound of water was a sacred voice in the desert. At the Nabatean city of Petra, the message was not only carved in rose-red rock, but channeled through a hidden network of cisterns, dams, and terracotta pipes. In a landscape defined by scarcity, the ability to control and display water was the ultimate declaration of power, a clear signal of both divine favor and unmatched engineering genius. This is the eighth principle, the language of water and hydraulic engineering. The builders integrated this life-giving element directly into their sacred architecture, transforming practical survival into a profound spiritual statement. The intricate system at Petra did more than just prevent floods and store drinking water. It fed ornate fountains and ritual pools right in the heart of the city, a spectacular display of abundance in the driest of places. This mastery was not unique. On the island of Crete, the Minoan palace of Knossos boasted sophisticated running water and drainage systems that would not be rivaled for over 1,000 years. But perhaps the most breathtaking fusion of all is found in the stepwells of India. These are not mere wells, they are inverted temples, breathtaking architectural marvels carved deep into the earth. Elaborate staircases descend past countless carved pillars and statues, leading down to the shimmering water table. They served as cool community centers during the heat of the day, but they were also places of ritual where the act of descending to the water was a spiritual journey into the earth itself. The sight, the sound, and the life-giving property of water were all woven into the stone message. It symbolized the flow of life, the concept of purity, and a direct connection to the underworld. To master water was to hold the keys to life and death, making its controlled presence within a monument one of the most powerful sentences in the entire ancient architectural language. The massive, corbelled dome of a Mycenaean Tholos tomb feels less like a building and more like a vessel, its beehive shape a deliberate echo of the Earth's womb, waiting for rebirth. This is the ninth principle, where funerary architecture becomes a detailed map to the afterlife. Tombs were never simple containers for the dead. They were meticulously designed vehicles for the soul's perilous journey, encoded with a complete set of instructions for navigating the world beyond. For generations, Egyptologists have painstakingly decoded the pyramid texts and the Book of the Dead, revealing that these were not just prayers but precise architectural manuals for the soul. They dictated the exact orientation of chambers, the specific spells to be painted on walls, and the ritual objects to be sealed within, all working in concert to protect and guide the spirit. This principle unfolds with stunning clarity at the passage tomb of Misho in Orkney. For most of the year, its central chamber lies in deep darkness, but as the winter solstice sun sets, its final rays align perfectly with the long, narrow entrance passage. A blade of light travels across the floor, piercing the gloom to strike the rear wall of the tomb. This was not just a celestial clock, it was a powerful act of symbolic reanimation, using the returning sun to awaken the dead, as if the light itself was a breath of life for the soul's next journey. Every single detail carried meaning. The direction a body faced could indicate the path to the land of the ancestors. Grave goods, from simple pottery to ornate jewelry, were provisions for the trip and declarations of status that the deceased would carry into the next world. The art on the walls served as both a guide and a protection, depicting gods, spirits, and the challenges the soul would face. This profound preoccupation with the afterlife reveals a society deeply concerned with its own legacy and memory, building not just for the living, but for the eternity of those who had passed. Yet this focus on a single soul's journey was often part of a much larger design, one that connected the fate of the individual to the very structure of the cosmos and the enduring power of the community. The sprawling geoglyphs of the Nazca Desert are a testament etched not for any single person, but for the entire community. These vast lines and figures, invisible from the ground, could only be created and conceptualized through the unified will of hundreds, perhaps thousands, of people working in concert over many generations. This is the 10th principle, the message of community and collective memory. Social anthropologists understand these massive projects as a kind of social glue. The act of building together, of moving earth and stone toward a common, almost invisible goal, forged a powerful shared identity. It transformed a collection of individuals into a people with a unified purpose, literally building their community into the very land they inhabited. The construction of a village's first protective wall or a communal tomb was more than a practical project. It was the physical act of creating a society. These monuments became a story in stone, a permanent record that declared, "We are here, we work together, and our shared effort creates a legacy that will outlive us all." This collective effort served as a living archive, ensuring that the group's knowledge, traditions, and very reason for being were physically preserved for their descendants. This deep-seated need to connect and remember is often revealed in the alignments between sites. A single standing stone in one valley might point directly toward a sacred mountain on the horizon, which in turn aligns with a burial cairn miles away. These lines were not just geographical, they were genealogical, connecting disparate communities into a single, remembered landscape. The monument itself was the final, enduring sentence in this ancient language, but its true meaning was only completed by the living community that gathered around it, season after season, generation after generation, remembering the story they had built together. A colossal stone head gazes from the jungles of Mexico, while another, separated by a vast ocean, stares from a remote Polynesian island. The sheer scale and the shared focus on the human visage is uncanny. How do we explain the parallel emergence of the Olmec heads and the moai of Rapa Nui? This is the grand, unresolved puzzle of a potential global network, a tapestry of interconnected messages woven across continents. The evidence is etched into the earth itself. The pyramids of Giza, the great mounds of Cahokia, and the step temples of the Maya all share a foundational grammar, a repeated obsession with orienting their bases to the cardinal points and aligning their structures to the path of the sun. For some researchers, like Graham Hancock, these similarities are too precise to be mere coincidence. They point toward the controversial idea of a lost, advanced progenitor civilization, a common source for this sophisticated knowledge that was then carried across the world. The mainstream academic view, however, often favors the concept of a shared human blueprint, a kind of innate psychological and cognitive toolkit that led different cultures in isolation to discover the same mathematical principles and architectural solutions. Whether through diffusionist contact or a parallel awakening of the human mind, the outcome is the same. The language of stone was a universal one. The golden ratio, a proportion revered for its aesthetic perfection, appears in the Parthenon of Greece and the layout of Teotihuacan in Mexico. Precise solar alignments were achieved at Stonehenge in Britain and the Sun Temple of Konark in India. This was not a local dialect but a mother tongue of monument building. Unraveling this global mystery forces us to look back, far back, to one of the very first and most perplexing structures ever built by human hands. A hilltop in Turkey holds a secret that unravels our entire story of civilization. Göbekli Tepe, with its rings of massive T-shaped pillars, was built by hunter-gatherers over 12,000 years ago, a full 6,000 years before Stonehenge. This was not a village or a fortress, it was a cathedral on a hill, a place of profound ritual constructed by people who had not yet learned to farm. The very existence of this site turns history on its head. For decades, we believed that agriculture came first, providing the surplus and stability that allowed for complex society, religion, and monumental architecture. Göbekli Tepe suggests the opposite. The driving force may have been a shared spiritual need, a collective desire to build something greater than themselves, which then necessitated the organized, settled life that would lead to farming. The lead archaeologist, Klaus Schmidt, argued that it was the need to feed the hundreds of workers building this temple that spurred the first deliberate cultivation of wheat, which grows wild in the surrounding hills. The architecture itself is a lexicon of this new, ancient language. The great T-shaped pillars are not abstract forms. They are stylized human figures, their broad tops representing heads with carved arms and hands meeting at the stone belly. These are ancestors, gods, or powerful spirits watching over the ritual circles. They stand as a silent congregation, a community in stone, and upon them is carved a menagerie of power and symbolism. Foxes, scorpions, boars, and cranes are etched with breathtaking skill and artistry. These are not simple decorations. They are a complex system of totems, a visual language representing different clans, spiritual beliefs, or perhaps a guide to the constellations in the sky above. Each animal is a word in a lost sentence. The builders went to one final, extraordinary length to preserve their message. When Göbekli Tepe's purpose was fulfilled, they did not abandon it to decay. They deliberately and carefully buried the entire complex under tons of earth, a conscious act of preservation that protected it for 12 millennia. This was not an act of destruction, but of reverence, a way to seal the sacred ground for eternity. The message of Göbekli Tepe is monumental. It tells us that the human capacity for complex symbolic thought, for large-scale cooperation, and for expressing a worldview in stone is far older and more fundamental than we ever imagined. If this is what hunter-gatherers were capable of, what other lost chapters of our architectural story are still hidden beneath the earth, waiting to whisper their secrets? The jungle did not destroy Angkor Wat, it simply absorbed it, wrapping the stone city in roots and vines until its message was whispered only to the trees. This is the fate of the lost libraries, entire chapters of our architectural story swallowed by time and nature. Off the coast of India, legends spoke of the golden city of Dwarka, a myth until marine archaeologists began pulling stone blocks from the seabed, evidence of a metropolis claimed by the rising ocean. These places were not merely abandoned, they were deliberately erased from human memory, their grand narratives silenced by earth and water. The very act of being lost adds a profound new layer to their meaning, a message about the fragility of our own memory and the patient, relentless power of the natural world to reclaim what we build. Now, technology is giving us the tools to read these lost pages. In the dense Cambodian jungle, LiDAR lasers fired from aircraft peel back the green canopy to reveal the ghostly outlines of a sprawling urban landscape around Angkor Wat, a city far larger and more complex than anyone had dreamed. This is not just discovery, it is resurrection. Each finding forces us to revise our entire understanding of the past, proving that our history is far richer and more intricate than the surviving fragments suggest. The debate intensifies with sites like the Yonaguni Monument off the coast of Japan. Are these massive, terraced structures a sunken city from a prehistoric civilization, a place lost to a cataclysmic earthquake in the distant past, or are they a breathtakingly symmetrical natural formation? The controversy itself is a testament to our burning desire to recover every last syllable of this ancient language. Every rediscovery, from a jungle-swallowed temple to a sunken fortress, is a reminder that the Library of Stone is still being catalogued, and its most astonishing volumes may still be waiting, hidden in plain sight. A laser scanner traces the contours of a Mayan stele, its invisible light revealing glyphs worn smooth by centuries of rain. This is the new frontier of archaeology, a digital excavation that leaves no mark. We have moved beyond the trowel and into the realm of satellite imagery and ground-penetrating radar, technologies that let us see through the earth itself to read the foundations of lost cities. These tools are granting us a new kind of vision, one that operates on a landscape scale. From the vantage point of space, platforms like Global Explorer enable a global community to scan satellite photos for the subtle earth stains and shadows that betray a hidden monument. This collective effort is revealing vast, interconnected patterns that a single archaeologist standing in a field could never perceive. We can now trace the straight lines of ancient roads across hundreds of miles, or confirm the alignment of a solitary standing stone with a mountain peak 20 kilometers away. The very geometry of the land is coming into focus, showing us that these sites were not isolated temples but nodes in a vast, sacred network. The analysis continues even after a site is found. Sophisticated software can take a 3D model of a stone chamber and calculate its acoustic properties, letting us hear the echoes as the builders intended. We can simulate the precise angle of sunlight on the winter solstice, watching a digital sunbeam crawl across a virtual floor to strike its target. We are, piece by piece, building a digital Rosetta Stone for this global language of stone. Yet with every new translation, new controversies ignite. Does a particular alignment truly indicate advanced astronomical knowledge, or is it a statistical coincidence? Does the pattern we see from space reflect an ancient spiritual map, or simply our own modern desire to find connections? The technology gives us powerful new data, but the interpretation of that data, the true meaning of the message, remains a deeply human endeavor, one that continues to challenge everything we thought we knew about our shared past. The stone blocks at Puma Punku are not merely cut, they are dissected with a surgeon's precision. Each andesite slab is interlocked with geometric perfection, featuring H-shaped slots and razor-sharp edges that seem to defy the capabilities of a society using only stone tools. This level of craftsmanship is so baffling it has fueled one of the most passionate debates in modern archaeology. On one side, mainstream science points to the immense capabilities of the Tiwanaku culture, arguing that patient, sophisticated techniques with stone and copper could achieve these results. On the other, popular theorists like Erich von Däniken look at the same evidence and see something else entirely, the possible handiwork of ancient astronauts or a forgotten civilization from a place like Atlantis. This is not a trivial argument. The very intensity of this controversy reveals how deeply these silent stones challenge our core assumptions. We are taught that technology progresses in a straight line from simple to complex. But what if that line is a circle or even a spiral? What if human history contains forgotten peaks and valleys of achievement? The debate often centers on a key question: diffusionism versus independent invention. Did cultures across the globe discover these advanced principles on their own, a testament to a shared human genius? Or was this knowledge carried across oceans by unknown explorers, seeding a common architectural language in distant lands? While extraordinary claims demand equally robust proof, the very persistence of these alternative theories underscores a vital truth. The message of Puma Punku is so powerful, so enigmatic, that it refuses to be confined by a single, comfortable explanation. It forces us to look harder, to question deeper, and to remain humble in the face of a past that may be far more complex than our textbooks allow. To move forward, we must sift through the speculation and return to the only evidence that truly speaks, the stones themselves and the hands that may have shaped them. The real story is not found in wild theories, but etched directly into the granite. To understand the builders, you must look at the physical evidence they left behind, the unshakable facts of tool marks and bone fragments. This is the primary text, and traditional archaeology provides its most reliable translation. At the ancient city of Jericho, the meticulous work of excavators like Kathleen Kenyon uncovered more than just famous walls. Her team found the actual stone dressing tools, the grooved mauls and flint chisels used to shape massive blocks. They uncovered the packed earth ramps and the levering points that made the impossible possible. This was the humble, tangible technology of the ancient world. Perhaps even more telling were the osteological remains from the worker villages. The analysis of animal bones and food waste reveals these laborers were well fed on a diet of beef, mutton, and fish, a clear sign they were valued specialists, not whipped slaves. This is how you feed an army of builders, a logistical feat as impressive as the construction itself. Across Europe, at the sprawling Karnak stone rose in France, the stones themselves tell a story of slow, deliberate evolution. The alignment and typology of the thousands of menhirs were not laid out in a single grand plan. The evidence shows they were erected over many centuries, with new rows and monuments added as beliefs shifted and generations passed. This was a living, breathing ritual landscape that grew and changed with the people who used it. This empirical approach, stone by stone and bone by bone, methodically builds a picture of the how and the when. It provides the essential, sober framework upon which all interpretations of the why must be carefully built. And this growing body of evidence increasingly points away from fanciful outside influences and toward a deep, powerful, and entirely indigenous development of complex human knowledge. A weathered hand traces the curve of a rock, its surface warm from the sun. An Aboriginal elder points to a line of stones, almost invisible among the scrub, and begins to sing. The melody is ancient, and with each phrase, the stones seem to awaken. This is not a ruin to be excavated, it is a living text. For countless indigenous cultures, the language of stone was never a mystery to be solved in a laboratory. It has been spoken, sung, and remembered in an unbroken chain of oral tradition that stretches back to the very builders themselves. These elders are the original knowledge keepers, and their understanding offers a profound corrective to the silent, object-focused gaze of Western science. Where an archaeologist might see a simple stone arrangement and record its dimensions, an elder sees the physical body of a creator ancestor from the dreamtime, frozen in a specific pose to mark a sacred event that shaped the world. The stones are not inanimate objects, they are active participants in a story that continues to unfold. This living connection transforms our entire understanding of these sites. They were not abandoned libraries, but chapters in a book that is still being read aloud. Anthropologists now race against time to document these living libraries, recording the intricate songs and ceremonial dances that act as a key, unlocking the true, intended meaning of the symbols. Without this cultural context, we are merely cataloging the alphabet of a language without ever learning its grammar or poetry. Consider the Inuksut built by the Inuit across the Arctic. To an outsider, they are simple stacks of stone, perhaps mistaken for random cairns. But within that culture, each configuration is a clear, functional sentence. A tall, slender inukshuk might mark a navigational route across the featureless tundra. A low, wide one could indicate a prime location for hunting caribou. Another, built with a central opening, might symbolize a spiritual passage or represent the human form, serving as a messenger to the spirits. The meaning is instantaneous and vital, a matter of survival and belief, not archaeological speculation. This perspective reminds us with humbling clarity that the stone language was never a dead code. It was the vibrant, functional software for navigating both the physical and spiritual worlds. The most accurate translators of this global architectural message may not be in universities with laser scanners, but are the descendants of the builders themselves, people for whom the stones have never fallen silent. This living thread does not just connect us to a distant past, it anchors the message in a powerfully relevant present, challenging us to listen not just with our eyes, but with our entire being. That primordial language of the builders did not fade into history, it simply learned new words. Look at the spiraling, shell-like form of the Guggenheim Museum in New York, a structure that draws you inward and upward in a continuous, sacred loop. Then look to the deliberately aligned city of Brasilia, its pilotis axis laid out like a colossal celestial arrow on the landscape. These are not accidental echoes. Modern architects like Frank Lloyd Wright, who spoke of organic architecture, and Le Corbusier, with his modular system of proportion, were consciously and unconsciously drawing from that deep well of ancient knowledge. They revived the use of the golden ratio, that same divine proportion found in Greek temples and the Great Pyramid, to create buildings that feel inherently balanced and beautiful to the human eye. This is not just about aesthetics, it is about creating spaces that evoke specific, powerful emotional responses, a tradition as old as the hypogeum's womb-like chambers. The Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. makes this connection breathtakingly clear. Its wall of reflective black granite does not tower over you, it invites you down a descending path, the names of the fallen emerging from the stone as your own reflection joins them. This is the language of a Neolithic tomb remastered, using descent, reflection, and the immutable nature of stone to guide you through a ritual of grief, memory, and profound contemplation. We still build to impress with our skyscrapers, to commemorate with our monuments, and to connect with something larger than ourselves in our places of worship. The impulse to encode our deepest messages into our structures is a timeless thread in the human spirit, proving that we are still speaking the old language, even if we have forgotten how to read the original texts. This enduring legacy now raises an urgent and difficult question. As we continue to build our own world, are we preserving the first chapters of this global story, or are we, through neglect and development, silently erasing the very library that taught us how to speak? Wind and sand are slowly scouring the face of the Great Sphinx, each grain of dust a tiny eraser on a monumental message. This is not a slow, natural end, but a rapid decay accelerated by modern pollution and acid rain, eating away at the very stone that has survived for millennia. The tragedy is even more acute when destruction is deliberate. The empty niches in the cliffs of Bamiyan, Afghanistan, stand as a haunting void where colossal Buddhas once watched over the valley. Their demolition was not just an act of war, it was the burning of a priceless volume in our shared library. The threats are relentless and varied. Unsustainable tourism wears down ancient floors with millions of footsteps, while cultural vandalism and looting shatter irreplaceable artifacts for a quick profit on the black market. In response, a global effort fights back. Organizations like the UNESCO World Heritage Center work to shield these sites, designating them as protected areas of outstanding value to all humanity. They reinforce crumbling walls, monitor environmental damage, and promote sustainable visits that allow for education without destruction. This is not merely about saving beautiful old buildings. It is a race to preserve the first and most durable records of human thought. Every faded hieroglyph, every weathered alignment is a word in the story of us. To lose these stones is to lose our connection to the minds of the first builders, to silence a dialogue that has lasted 12,000 years. This responsibility falls to us now. Future generations will inherit whatever we manage to save, gaining the chance to hear these ancient whispers for themselves. The survival of this language depends entirely on our understanding of its profound value and our collective will to protect it against the relentless tide of time. Stand before any ancient monument and the stones will speak, but only if you know how to listen. You do not need a degree in archaeology to begin this conversation. You simply need to become an active decoder. The first step is to move beyond seeing a random pile of rocks and start observing the deliberate patterns. As the sun rises, notice where the light falls. Does a specific shaft of sunlight pierce a dark passageway, perhaps on the morning of a solstice? This is not a coincidence, it is a calendar and a spiritual statement frozen in time. Pay close attention to the symbols carved into the surface. Is there a repeated motif, a spiral, a series of concentric circles, or an animal figure? Their repetition is the equivalent of a word being emphasized, a core concept the builders wanted to echo through the ages. Next, engage your other senses. Step inside a chambered tomb or a stone circle and clap your hands softly. Listen. Does the sound reverberate in a strange way, creating an echo that seems to come from the walls themselves? This acoustic property was likely engineered, a tool to alter consciousness during rituals. Run your hand over the joints between the stones. Feel the precision of the fit, the way massive blocks are interlocked without mortar. This craftsmanship is a message about the builders' knowledge, their patience, and the immense value they placed on this structure. Finally, read the larger landscape. Why was this exact spot chosen? Does the site offer a commanding view of the territory, suggesting a role in defense or territorial control? Or is it tucked away in a secluded valley, hinting at a purpose of secret initiation or private worship? Look at what the structure faces. A carving might gaze directly at a sacred mountain on the horizon, physically connecting the monument to a feature the culture revered. Ask the simple, powerful questions. Why this particular shape? Why this specific place? Why this type of stone? Your own curiosity becomes the key. This personal act of observation and inquiry transforms a tourist visit into a profound historical dialogue, allowing you to unlock layers of meaning and hear the whispers of the builders across the centuries. The journey from that first carved symbol to the impossible precision of Puma Punku reveals a language far richer than we ever knew. It was a grammar of existence, written not in ink but in alignment and acoustics, in material and mythology. This was not a primitive form of communication. It was a sophisticated, multidimensional code, a system as complex as any modern language, capable of conveying everything from precise astronomical data to the deepest spiritual beliefs, from the raw assertion of political power to the very identity of a community. These master builders left behind a testament to a universal human need, a drive that courses through us still, the need to create, to communicate meaning, and to leave a mark that echoes long after our own voices have fallen silent. As our technology evolves from satellite lasers to acoustic modeling, we are not just solving puzzles, we are recovering a vital part of our shared human heritage, chapter by rediscovered chapter. The next time you find yourself before an ancient stone, whether in a photograph or in person, remember that you are not looking at a ruin. You are looking at a page from the first book ever written, a silent story waiting for a reader. We would love to hear which ancient site's message resonates most deeply with you. Share your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe for more journeys into history's greatest mysteries.